What if your American last name isn't American at all? What if it's not even your family's real name? Because millions of German immigrants had their names changed in America. So, why did America change them? And why do so many Americans still not know? In America, many German names didn't simply disappear. They changed. Sometimes the names were translated into English. Brown became Brown. Fisher became Fisher. Weber became Weaver. Other names were simplified so Americans could pronounce them more easily. Müller became Miller. Schneider became Snyder. And sometimes the change was even bigger. Schmidt became Smith. Johansson became Johnson. Over time, thousands of German family names were adapted to sound more English, which means the last name you have today might once have sounded completely different. So, why did this happen? At first, the reason was simple: language. In the 19th century, millions of German immigrants arrived in the United States. But many Americans simply couldn't pronounce their names, so families often adapted them. The German name, Koch, often became Cook. Jung was sometimes changed to Young. Bauer could turn into Bauer, or even Farmer. And Kruger sometimes became Kruger or Kroger. But pronunciation wasn't the only reason these names changed. At the beginning of the 20th century, everything became much more serious. During World War I, anti-German sentiment spread across the United States. German language disappeared from many schools. German newspapers were shut down. Even German culture suddenly became suspicious. And in that atmosphere, even a German last name could make you a target. For many families, keeping their original name no longer felt safe. So they changed it. And over generations, many of these changes became permanent. Children grew up with the new names. The original German versions slowly disappeared from family history. Today, millions of Americans have last names that look completely English, but some of them may have started as German. For example, the German name Gross was often changed to Cross, and Weiss sometimes became Wise. Over time, these new names became the family's identity. And here's something many Americans don't realize. Germans were once the largest immigrant group in the United States. In the 19th century, millions of Germans settled across the country, from Pennsylvania to the Midwest. Entire towns had German-speaking communities. German newspapers were printed in American cities, and German language schools existed in many states. In fact, by the late 1800s, German was one of the most widely spoken languages in the United States after English. Some American cities even had neighborhoods where German was the main language of everyday life. Churches held services in German, newspapers were published in German, and children often grew up speaking both languages. But during World War I, that changed dramatically. German language classes disappeared from many schools. German books were removed from libraries, and speaking German in public sometimes attracted suspicion. Over time, many German traditions faded from public life, and family names were often the last visible trace of that heritage. And during that period, something else began to happen. German identity in America didn't just fade. In many places, it was actively pushed aside. During World War I, even ordinary things connected to Germany suddenly became controversial. Some communities removed German names from streets and public places. German cultural clubs and societies quietly disappeared. Even food was affected. In some places, sauerkraut was temporarily renamed Liberty cabbage. But the biggest change happened inside families. Many parents stopped teaching their children German. They wanted their children to sound completely American. Within a single generation, millions of Americans with German roots grew up speaking only English. And as the language disappeared, The original family names often disappeared with it. And that's how, over time, many German names slowly blended into American life. Not because families forgot where they came from, but because each new generation adapted to a new language, a new culture, and a new country. Sometimes the change was small. Sometimes it was dramatic. And after a few generations, the original name could almost disappear. Yet the history behind it remained. Because behind every last name there is a journey, a family story, and often a past that stretches much further back than we imagine. Have you ever met someone named Meyer, Klein, Schneider, or Taylor? Or maybe someone named King, George, Walter, or Arnold? Names that sound completely American today, but may have started somewhere very different. One of those names might even be yours. So, let me ask you something. What's your last name? If you'd like, you can share it in the comments below. We read every single comment, and I'm always curious to see what family names appear under these videos. Sometimes the stories people share in the comments are just as fascinating as the history itself. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden history behind American identity, consider subscribing to the channel. There are many more fascinating historical facts like this that most people have never heard before. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, sometimes the most surprising pieces of history are hidden in the names we carry every single day.